Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. Today, we are speaking with Shelley Jeffcoat. Shelley is the founder of LCM Group, Learn, Coach, Model, and host of Slice of Pie Live, which is proud, inspired, and empowered. She is the architect of values and culture at LexisNexis Risk Solutions. A business owner, speaker, coach, and veteran spouse. Shelley, welcome to the show.
That is the best entrance ever. I'm so excited to be here. I hope y'all are ready to learn some things. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are so happy to have you as we discuss this topic, folks. We will be speaking about employer brand and employee value proposition, EVP. If you've never heard of it, this is the episode for you as we discuss this very important posture in branding. But before we get into that, Shelley, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh man, so I launched LCM Group last year, April 1st, 2002, and I own a brand called Pi, so Proud, Inspired, Empowered. And it really was an effort to support teams really creating languages and messaging, and it just kind of blossomed into what a lot of people are seeing now. I am also a proud member of the Parade Deck family, so I just need to throw that out there. There's a really good camaraderie that we have. And then outside of that, I'm an architect. So I'm architect for cultural transformation. And it's just something that I've been very blessed with. Is these are talent and skills that I've picked up as a brand expert. I have, a lot of different outlets that I use. And I think what I'm going to appreciate today is not just talking to you and explaining what EVP is and how you kind of leverage that, whether it's as a job search or if you're an organization building an employer brand. But for those of y'all who are in the job market, I'm going to share some tips that I think could be really helpful for you as well. So all those things, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm all those amazing things, author, but more importantly, I'm a servant here today. So I'm here to help.
And I'm so excited about this conversation. Before we got into recording, it was just a laugh fest, folks. It was just, it's an infusion of how do you get yourself in a position where you become the value, right? You become the value. People are attracted to you. And so having said that, Shelley, what is employer brand and EVP?
So the basic definition, you actually start with an EVP. So think of it this way: an EVP is how an organization, if it's an employer brand, how do you define the things that you have to offer? If you're an employer, you want to showcase what makes your organization a great place to work, and so that's the external facing. That is done through a significantly trying process. There's a lot of research that takes place before you go into that. So you're researching your employees and potential candidates. You're researching competitors, that entire talent market. You're coming up with what these values are. You're creating the different taglines, so the verbiage, the messaging, the guidelines, all of those things. And then after you've had that in place, then you're creating the brand. So a lot of times people see a brand. So for example, if I throw out Nike, what's the tagline for Nike?
Just
do it, right? So that's a tagline. So when you're creating an employer brand, a lot of employers do the same thing. It's a way of getting a succinct message out about the entire organization, who they are, so who we are as an organization. What we have to offer is the EVP and the value proposition. And there are 3 different types of brands, right? So we're going to touch on employer brand. And so think about that through what's the value the organization has to offer as an employer. But a lot of times people are seeing personal brand, and you also have to have your values aligned to that. So what do you have to offer as a person, right? You're the entity. And then the last brand is a business brand. So small business or larger organizations, how do they attract clients and investors? So those are the 3 different types of brands. They all have to have a value proposition. What is that compelling reason that people want to buy from you or hire from you?
I love that description. And folks, if you can just envision an orchestra, right? Each one
Yes,
of those represents an instrument.
that's
And if
right.
any one of those three are out of whack,
That's
you're going
right.
to know.
You're gonna know. Yes.
Either you will know or somebody's going to tell you. So,
And they do. And they do. And it shows up in your numbers. So if you think about, I'm most proud of the organization where I am right now. So when I say I'm the architect of our EVP, we actually have 7 EVPs. So we're in a very different, a lot of organizations have one. We have 7 individual business brands. So we have 7, and then in totality, we kind of create the atmosphere and our values and culture for one. So you think about, how do you make it kind of like our common set of values, so that it doesn't matter where you work within the organization, you're experiencing the same things. When we say we're innovative, that shows up in our process. When we say we're inclusive, that shows up in our retention strategies, things like that, right? So there are organizations that have employer brand as a function, and a lot of them they tuck it under like talent acquisition, and that might work well for them. But for me, I had to be more strategic. And so employer brand is aligned to how you attract, how you retain, how do you engage employees, how do we communicate, how do you market, all of those things, how do you recognize and reward. So it's more strategic and broader and global than some of the other traditional employer brand leaders have been doing. And it had to be done that way just because of the nature of the businesses that I'm in.
well, what I find is that some processes for folks work.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that it works well. And that's
That's
what you
right.
take folks, right, to
that's
making sure that it works well.
that's
Now,
right.
so much talk about branding, so much talk
Yes.
about strategies around those things. Why is employer brand so important?
Oh my gosh. So if you think about purely from an attraction, so on the attraction scale, organizations spend a ton of money trying to hire. And part of trying to hire and attract candidates, meaning you have to tell a compelling story about why, folks want to come and join you. And so in order to do that, you have to be able to explain who you are and the environment that you have, and why your employees feel great about where you are. It is a significant amount of money, millions of dollars that organizations are spending every year on just pure recruitment. And that's just the attraction part. Retention, I think about how do we engage employees, and then how do you shift from the brand, the look and feel and pretty stuff, right? The storytelling. But how do you bring that into the experience, the employee's experience? Right? Because you can't be on social media. So here's something that I tell other employer brand leaders. I get this question all the time, and I say, okay, pretend that you're on a dating app. Like I'm not, but let's pretend that we are, right? And so you have this person shows up, and they're showing up in their best of selves. They're handsome, they're young, and you're flipping through it, and you're now saying that, okay, we're going to meet in person. You go to meet that person, and it's nothing like the app, nothing like what you see. It's very similar with employer brand. If you're going on career sites, if you're going on their social media and they're telling a beautiful story, and then when you get to that job after you've gone through the interview and it looks nothing like what you saw, it's like a fail. It's a huge fail. Now, that impacts your reputation, that impacts your brand equity, that impacts how customers and clients view you, that impacts your ability to reach more investors. But that's why companies spend a lot of money, take a lot of time making sure that they have a strategic employer brand initiative and an EVP to support that.
There's nothing worse than being catfished by a
That's a
company.
catfish. That's right.
Look, don't be catfishing
don't
me.
be don't be catfished by a company, right? You got to be mindful. Like you go on these sites, I'm telling you, there's a lot of organizations, they spend a lot of money in great, beautiful, images and videos, but you have to get behind that story. Go and see, are they winning culture awards? I can tell you, I've won 17 in 2 years, and we had zero, and that zero was before I started. So there's a lot of things to be really proud of, but there's a lot of mechanics and partnerships and stakeholder relationships with our C-suite and our employees and getting everybody on board. But that actually, again, comes from having a common purpose, a common sense of purpose. We know what our values are, and tying it back to that actual value proposition.
Hey, folks, anything good takes work.
Yes,
Takes work,
absolutely.
right? So, Shelley, what can I do to establish my employee value proposition?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk to this from I'm going to hit on it from an employer perspective. So as a business, and then I'm going to hit on it on a personal brand because y'all need to get these tea. Okay. So if you're an employer and you're trying to build your employer brand, again, you really need to go through the process of actually doing the research or having workshops, because what you want to do is you want to gather information about what are the things that are most important to you. If you're a person, it's a similar exercise. So there are questions that I would try out for myself if I'm trying to build my own personal brand. What are maybe the 3 or 5 things that are most important to me, the way that I see myself? And I'm also gathering information about how others view me, because my personal brand is how I'm showing up in rooms when I'm not even in that room, right? So if you think about that, and then what is the actual value that I bring? So I was in a conversation yesterday with some marketing execs, and I had the same question. There are 3 things that we think about when you're building your brand. So whether it's a personal or a business. So we're thinking about our identity, right? So what we're known for. We're thinking about the values, the values that's aligned to us, how people see us, thought leader, problem solver, strategic, all of those things, family, all of those things. And then the final thing is purpose, right? Because you actually have to live this thing out. Otherwise, it's not a real brand. So think about those 3 things when you're trying to build out your value prop, and then step back and think, what is the actual value that I bring? Whether it's to the organization, sometimes it's to the project, sometimes it's to family, right? So you have to be really, really clear. And then what ends up happening with your personal brand is you start messaging those things out naturally. Some of it comes off on, if you go on LinkedIn, you can pretty much tell what's really important to people, right? You can see it in the messaging, you can see it in some of the thought leadership, the articles that they're writing and things of that nature. And that's another way of communicating your actual value. But those things, you have to, the one thing for us as an organization, you can't have employees advocate for the business if they don't have a personal brand themselves. I don't want anybody advocating if you if they're listen, if you're on the catfish level, we don't want you advocating, right? Because the reputation is tied to that, right? If you're a small business owner and you have an employee, you really have to think about, what does that look like? What are you saying about the business? Because your employees represent your organization. And in the same way, I'm representing myself when I'm thinking about it from a personal brand perspective. So that's why you really got to be thoughtful. Again, personal brand is not just about having great headshots and a tagline, but there's just a lot more things that are kind of associated with managing your brand.
Well, they say proof is in the pudding.
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
look, I have my company shirt on,
Yes,
triad leaves. I don't want everybody wearing this thing.
that's right.
Right?
That's
There's some people that have no business wearing it, and I don't want them wearing it. Now,
that's
I
right.
also have a success to you, hashtag success to you t-shirt that I normally wear. Not everybody is up to par with the
That's right.
brand
That's right.
to wear that.
That's
And so
right.
you also have to take those things into consideration as a company, but as a person, right? You
Yeah.
have to know
Yes.
what you're attaching yourself to
That's right.
and make sure it's counting,
That's
because
right.
your life is day by day, sometimes
Exactly.
minute by minute, right? And so you
Exactly.
have to make sure that it counts. Now, as leaders,
Yeah.
we're always trying to look a certain way,
Yeah.
feel a certain way, but as you're talking, I'm saying there's a lot of leaders that clash with their own identity on a day-to-day
Exactly.
basis, let
Exactly.
alone trying to, own their own value proposition. But how can leaders ensure that they are increasing their value as they're going day to day in their businesses?
That's such a great question. So there are leaders who end up replicating and becoming the company that they work for. I'm saying this as someone who had to shift. I've shifted from that a couple of years ago because I realized that I literally was just being like I was a mouthpiece and a clone, which didn't work for me because I have so much else to offer and I understand the value that I bring. I have a ton of experience. I do a lot of things outside of the corporate space, a lot of things in community, and I have a lot of other talents and gifts. So I really had to go back and look at my own personal brand to see what is it that's most important to me. And then I really started to communicate those things out. So for leaders, this is where, remember that thing that happened a few years ago, the pandemic, and we trotted out the word authenticity a lot. And a lot of people were on LinkedIn, hashtagging authenticity and, having a lot of roundtables. This is where that comes into play. Who you are at the job is not necessarily who you are outside of your job, right? You're not necessarily the same person. Most of us aren't. I'm not. But it doesn't say that you're not a well-rounded person if you don't show your full self, who you are. So some of the ways that leaders have been able to really lean into their personal brand is adapting. So there's like five that, I share with leaders all the time. There's like five different areas you could be considered strategic or a thought leader or a problem solver. There's some areas that are kind of general, and then you really lean into, if you're a thought leader, by the way, that means that you're creating articles or you're sharing, industry information. You're a part of that conversation. You're moving things forward, and you're not just liking and reposting, but you're a part of that kind of conversation, and you're showing up as a leader in the way that you're resolving or recommending, if you're a strategist, things like that, right? So it's going back to what are some of the core skills, what are the most valued for you, what are you most known for? If you're not known on the job as someone who's a problem solver, and then you show up on social media and all of a sudden you're a problem solver, it will backfire because it's not authentic. So just remember that anything you do, it does actually impact your reputation. Show up as who you truly are. And if there's skills that you need to build on over time, that's okay. The other thing I want to share for leaders is the other mistake that leaders make is just not showing up at all, or they have their social media team leading everything. Come on. People know. People know when it's the social media team rolling things out for a leader. And we can tell because if you drop a tag or congratulations in the comments and there's no response, right? Then that actually doesn't serve you well, right? Because there's a level of trust and credibility that also comes when you're building your brand as a leader. So if you're a leader, and you're present on social media networks like LinkedIn, because that's where the majority of us go for business, then at least maybe once in a while, start, respond back, say thanks, engage with the people who are engaging with your post, because that actually does help your reputation. And it really takes nothing for you to do that, especially with that, helping drive employee advocacy and your team support.
And that is so important. I'll give you an example, and I'm going to use it right now because I can. So and it's so true. It's to your point. I had a person on this podcast, and since I've had 170, you're not going to figure out who it is. So I had this person, engaged for a whole year. We're talking back and forth. They were on the podcast. We've had other conversation. And the other day in my inbox was, I noticed that you like my post. Can you go and I knew it wasn't them.
What?
I knew it wasn't them. And I said, oh my goodness, I have been downgraded to the everyone pile.
Yes.
But to your point, I started seeing this person differently.
Yes.
As inauthentic.
That's
you
right.
Talk about authenticity. How about inauthenticity? That's even right. A thing. But that's what happens when you start becoming detached from your brand.
Yes.
And not owning that. Those that you have built relationships with, that relationship can be damaged or hurt simply because of ease and comfortability.
That's right.
I know that we can't answer every message. Believe me, I'm in that boat. But I make time to do so because it is part of my brand.
That's right.
I cannot say that I am a caring leader if I don't care about something.
Exactly. And it shows up. So here's another thing. Brands are supposed to help you build communities. So those communities could be your community of potential clients. It could be your community of employees, whatever it is. So, when I talk about the numbers on social media, I don't like to use the F word followers. I say community because I want to be able to provide a value to the people who are subscribing or the people who are reaching out or whatever, right? Because I feel like if you're connecting, now you're in the community. And so part of my responsibility is to share information that's going to help drive this community, whatever that looks like. But it's also part of my responsibility to make sure that I'm taking care of and maintaining these relationships. So there are folks again on LinkedIn who have a ton of followers, but you gotta at least, like, in the information that you share out, is it something that's helpful? Does it provide value? Because that is your brand. You got these people to follow you, right? For the lack of a better term, because you were showcasing a particular brand, and now they're here, and it's like there's nothing, there's nothing, or they're going to charge me, come and join a community, and you're going to charge me $100 for a community. No, so just think about, like, when you build up these incredible communities, the value that you're providing to those communities. In the same way, as a business, as a brand, what's the value that you're providing to that your employee base or your candidate pool or your community? It's the same way you do it in your personal brand. So those are some of the easy, honestly, easy ways. And if you're the social media team and you're supporting, leaders who, quite frankly, they don't have the bandwidth, and that's just not part of their thing, then come up with a strategy where come up with a strategy, because the last thing you want is to have, like, for me, I tell people I'd rather have 200 followers and 10% of those are active customers than having 2 million followers and and no customers at all. So just being very strategic about how you're using the mediums to support your brand.
Look, we've been on stage together. I'm telling you
Yes.
something. we we don't break bread. I don't know what to say about that. But anyway, let me get off my soapbox and ask you this next question, which is so important. What can employers do to help their people explore more? Because
Yeah.
it's part of your tag there.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So explore more for the organization. So when you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see what I mean about having I'm a dual role person. So explore more is a tagline that we came up with because we wanted to encourage people to be inspired, encouraged to go out and explore different things about the businesses and the functions and all the things that are out there. I think one of the things that I think employers should absolutely do when you think about employee advocacy, so traditionally with organizations, they'll have an internal comms or an external comms team, and they create assets, and they kind of share those out. So diversity days, we all know what there is. Every time there's a holiday, there's a generic post or something or the other. But what you want to do is you want to encourage your employees to tell their own stories. So you went into the office, just making this up, y'all. No shade to anybody who did this, or props to those who did. Okay. But you went into the office, you had a great meeting, and you throw up a post with a picture of, yay, we met together in the office, but it really says nothing. So, what did you learn? Or was it a good experience? Or, really putting some thought about what is it you're trying to say and why are you posting? Sometimes I'm like, why are you posting that? Like, that makes no sense. What is it? What's the call to action? So being very mindful of, as an employer, if you're creating this employee advocacy space, giving people the tools and the guidelines so that they can tell a compelling story. But as a person, listen, there are I don't know, millions of people on LinkedIn, but you are your own story. I am just me, right? So I can only tell the story of me and what I have to offer, and the community will support that, right? And going back to being authentic, if I went to an event and I'm showcasing the event because of how I manage and my messaging, the way that I manage my messaging is I'm typically hyping other people. I'm an ambassador for everybody. So it's just naturally that, but that is actually a part of my value. And people know that's really, yeah, that's Shelley. So I'll put up a post and halfway through I'm talking about, how great something was, but I'm going to end it by supporting somebody else. That's literally who I am. So people come to know that. If I throw out a post and it's me standing next to a Porsche and, just saying, oh, Leah got a great, they would question that because they'd be like, that's not you. So think about what it is that you're putting out. Is it real to you? And what is the actual call to action? If you're a person who's looking for a job, this is a great time to start sharing things about projects that you've worked on or things that you resolved, or if you're taking continuous learning courses. Every single Friday for months now, if you go on my LinkedIn or YouTube or any of the channels, and I'll drop the link in the chat, you guys, we've been offering free personal and professional development webinars on Fridays at 1 o'clock, where there's a group of us, we pull experts together, and we're literally giving you information that you could come in and learn, and you can add it to your KPOs as, hey, Mr. Manager, here's something that I learned this week. It's all business related. If you're in the job market and you're trying to figure out, what are some of the ways that I can boost my resume? Literally, we have all of those things, free training, free access to everything. So go on our site and go check out and see what's available to you. That actually helps your brand, because now you're showcasing that, you're a continuous learner, right? That's another value that you would be bringing to the organization. This person, is innovative and they're thinking and they're a leader and blah, blah, blah. So you're looking for ways to really build up your brand, but you're not just saying that thing, you're doing it.
That's right. Do it. Don't say it.
I do it.
Because I tell you what, people know when you ain't.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you that, what are you up to? What's coming up? What are you participating in? Anything coming up in the future? And how can they get a hold of you if they want you to come and give them that checklist?
Oh man. Okay. So there's a lot. So we're going to lead you to the Parade Deck site because there's so much happening. I have a couple of lives every week, probably 2 to 3 lives every week that I do. If you're interested in, we have a free class coming up. It's, I believe it's the 17th of May. You'll be able to find this on our channel, y'all. But it's called Personal Brands for Veterans. And this is for those veterans who are trying to move or transition into the job market, or maybe you've been in the job market for a while. So I'm going to walk you through live. You can join live, drop your questions, and I'm going to do, take Q&A. It's free, by the way. It's free. So please show up because I'm trying to help as many people as we can. But yeah, I just closed out an event yesterday, doing the Power of Purpose. So I do keynote speaking and I'm available for that. For small business owners, small business veterans, small business veterans owners, if you're looking for help with business, brand, and strategy, you can connect with us at LCM Group, and you can come, check us out on our website. So there's a lot. And by the way, I have a day job. So I spin a lot of plates, but I'm just blessed that way.
There's a lot of plate spinning on both sides of these things. Well, folks, I tell you, it's been great, Shelley, talking to you. And I'm encouraged all those leaders out there, companies, organizations, work on your EVP. Just because you have a paycheck doesn't mean that it's worth much. I tell you, because there's some people that'll go after that paycheck and find out that they got catfished.
That's right.
by their employer.
That's right. I love that's a whole tagline. Don't be catfished by your employer. Employers don't catfish your candidates. We have officially branded this call.
That's right. Hey, that's what happens when you get Shelley and me on the same podcast. It's gonna be fun. But it's been wonderful to host you today, Shelley. Thank you for sharing all that information about EVP and how leaders can get that right and companies can get that right. Folks, today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and SuperPass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, and Harchester, London. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment right now. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to our show. So if you know someone or have a topic that you would like covered or featured on the podcast, or you want to sponsor our show, we love to hear about it by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everybody.